Are we live yet?
We
Are we live yet?
yes, we are. What's
we live
happening,
yet?
everybody? Shut up. Like this video, share this video, do all things with this video. It's time for Truth Will Set You Free, episode 194. We got to do something special, Cash and Casey, for number 200, which will be in 6 weeks, which means it'll be, that could also be my birthday week. I'm not sure. We got to look. 6 weeks? That might be
what day?
September. My birthday is September 7th. Counting?
It's the Tuesday following your birthday.
Okay, that's all right. Well, close enough. We'll count it. So anyways, so start sharing this video out. We got a pretty good episode, including a brave soul from the other side. If you saw my climate change blunt force discussion, we got Barry Klinger. He's in the building. We'll bring him up in a second. It's weird, Kelly. I'm a 41-year-old man that doesn't feel 41 because he never had that 40th birthday that typically their significant other throws for them and this big celebration. Instead, I had a really good day on my 40th, but whatever. I digress.
Hey, I'm say right now, if I don't have the biggest birthday party, this is my first birthday home. Oh, I better have a Lollapalooza.
Well, you could literally sell out an arena based on just your own children being there. So that's.
They're not invited.
Kelly's not invited. Kelly, you're not invited. All right.
No, my children.
Oh, your children are invited. Casey's on the road right now. So real quick, let me tell you what the show's going to be about, and then we'll do quick round, and then we'll bring up Barry. I know that didn't make a ton of sense, but you know what I'm talking about. So today, the big issue, we have somebody from the opposite side of the political coin. We're going to talk about how Kamala went from the back of the lineup to all of a sudden the chosen one, crowd favorite, raising $200 million, newfound popularity, the media darling, all the things. We also have a special guest, as I said, who's I would believe would be a Kamala voter, well ahead of a Trump voter. So we're going to talk about that. Cash and Barry at that point will probably go. Barry can stick around. We're going to talk a little bit about Venezuela, the election there. And I do want to talk a little bit about what's going on with the Olympics, the male boxer and the women's, and then the opening ceremonies and all the confusion around it and all that stuff. That's what we'll talk about. Anyways, before we bring Barry up, anything you want people to know out there? Cash, Casey, what do we got?
I just want to say that I love y'all, man. Each and every one of y'all. I really do. I appreciate y'all. Straight up. You've been supporting the channels and everything else in between, encouraging. I love y'all. Thank you.
That guy right there.
No, I wasn't late. I can't be late. I'm a guy, regardless of what you hear from the left.
But you're black.
You get it? I'm not black. I'm American. Get it right. Get it right.
Got it. Casey, where are you at?
I am at Bear Lake trying to enjoy my time, but work is getting in the way. But that's okay.
Is Bear Lake where like the muscular, masculine gay men go to hang out? Is that Bear Lake?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, just checking. I think Kelly's flirting. It's weird. All right, let's go ahead and bring up our guest.
Kelly. Hey, Kelly.
Introducing to the stage, Barry Klinger. Barry is he's got his own I'm going to say network. What do you call Barry? What do you call Slow News? What do you call it? Blog. I couldn't think of the word. Barry, introduce yourself to the audience in 3 words or less. Just kidding. It's short. Just keep it short. Keep it sweet.
I'm a scientist at George Mason University. I'm very nerdy, and I want to talk about how to think about politics because I think a lot of people reflexively go to their tribal affiliation instead of, thinking about each issue as it comes. I know you guys probably think that's more true on my side than your side, but we'll see when we're talking today. And I'm jazzed to talk about the election with Trump supporters. See if we can find any common ground between us.
And
oh man, I like you, Barry. I already like you. You know what? You already. I liked you instantly when I seen you. Number one, because your name is Barry, and I'm a huge Flash fan. Barry Allen, you know what I'm saying? So you got that. But what you just said right now, that's your second strong point. You got 2 points that you get to lose in today's show. If you lose them, you are kicked off the panel. Just kidding.
I'll try to lose them, but we'll see.
Kidding, brother.
I've only kicked off one person from the panel. I've muted Carl Covington, and I kicked off what was his name? He still follows us. Really good guy. Gay, huge MAGA from the Carolinas. He just got to be too much. He apologized afterwards. The only person I kicked off was a Republican ever. So
Facts.
there's chances are I will not kick you off.
Have you had other Democrats besides me?
Oh,
yeah.
we used to have a bunch,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then they stopped coming when all of a sudden it became
They stopped
apparent.
coming when I went to prison.
Pretty
now
much.
that I'm back, I'm sure they will come.
I think they did. I think part of it was like, I'm not going to be on with these white racists. Speaking of that, with the thing we didn't even talk about in the beginning, and I don't know if Barry, if you saw this, what was it? White dudes for Kamala?
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
So what I find funny is I watched the first like 15 minutes, and I do plan on watching more because it was hilarious. I love two things. First off, they talk about their inspiration of doing the white dudes for Kamala was based on black women for Kamala. And they were like, they raised $1 million. And I find it ironic that the white dudes raised $4 million. So even the white guys still found a way to do better. Anyways, I digress.
You know what's really crazy, bro?
What?
You know what's real crazy about that? Like, I was fascinated because the last time that many white Democratic men came together for a black woman was like at a rally, at a Klan rally, for sure.
Which is the first thing the guy said. Barry, legit, I sent it to them earlier today. He goes, I know some people might feel uncomfortable with this because anytime white men have ever come together to create things in America, usually it's when they have pointed white hats on. That's I sent it in the chat, Cash.
Oh.
That was one of the first things. That's how the organizer opened it. I wanted to reach through. And then the last thing I'll say about it, because I haven't watched much. This was all in the first 10 minutes. Was the fact that the first speaker brought on by the organizer in the white dudes for Kamala was a black guy, which I find the irony is not dead there. So
he
anyways,
identified as a white man, bro.
He identified
you can't say
as
that. He identified
something.
as a white man. That's the thing. You can do that.
It's just it's good stuff.
I identify as a tribal chief.
Do you? It's good. I was gonna say you identify as a pineapple. So Barry, if you can't tell, this show is a little bit more laid back. But we do. I mean, we hit hard, but it's more laid back than blunt force discussion. Barry and I had a drop down, drag out, but peaceful hour and 50-minute conversation about climate change, which I had a lot of fun during. And that's where. But this is, we're gonna go back and forth. I kind of quarterback this because white guys quarterback. Cash should be the running back. What's that?
We're gonna even it out today though, because I'm gonna tell you right now, since Barry's got the coolest name ever in the superhero history, I'm gonna be the devil's advocate today, and I'm also gonna pretend to be a liberal. So I'm gonna argue against everything y'all say.
That'll be interesting. Okay, I got allies now.
I'm not gonna lie,
like
Barry.
the fact that I have the same first name as the former president. Barack Obama went as Barry when he was a teenager.
I have the same middle name as the former first lady. My middle name's Michael. So anyways, with all of that said, the last thing I do want to bring up, what was it? Before we get into Kamala, I got distracted with the Big Mike joke. I don't know. Yeah, we'll just get right into it. Let's just get right into the whole Barry, explain.
So here's why Kamala is so great.
That's perfect.
Because Trump is so terrible.
Okay.
So all we need, I think, speaking as another white guy for Harris, all we need is someone halfway decent. Because any candidate, you're going to find good things and bad things about them. Kamala, she was a prosecutor. She was the AG, so that's sort of an executive position. She ran the office. She was in the Senate. She's been hanging out, getting on the job training to be president for the last 3.5 years. So, why not? But I think that the other thing that we can see is that I kind of felt that way about Biden too. Like, he's kind of old. He seems all right now. You may disagree, but he seems to be carrying on the office without the country going to hell. But 4 years from now, I could see people might be worried about that.
You're good.
So,
all right. So, Cash, the first question I got for you, since you're going to be the liberal today, you're voting for Kamala Harris, right?
Yes, I am.
All right. Thank you for that clip. I'll share it around tomorrow.
I am voting for Kamala Harris because, first off, she has a fantastic. When she was a prosecutor, she locked up more of these tyrannical black people than anybody in California history. And she was so dedicated to it that she kept people there that weren't even guilty.
Wait, Cash. But these guys had to be dangerous criminals, right?
No. As long as they were locked, it didn't matter what they did. We just had to keep them locked up. And she did that. She did that single-handedly. All right.
So even if it was minor weed offenses, she
doesn't
made
matter.
sure.
No. You know what? I'm upset though. I'm not gonna lie. I'm upset because the Supreme Court and government overreach for sure made her release 1,000 people from prison for being wrongly convicted. Like what? That's insane. They should stay in their own business and leave California business to Kamala. They should have never let those 1,000 innocent people go.
Go ahead, Barry.
I hope all that helps us in the election because she was being criticized for in 2020 being criticized for being too tough on crime was kind of a problem. But in 2024, even though the murder rate's gone down from what it was under Trump, people are still more concerned about crime now than I think they were back then. But I was going to say about Kamala is good enough and Biden was good enough. But you saw something interesting. When Biden screwed up with that debate, people were saying he wasn't good enough. They were saying still better than Trump, I guess. But the Democrats wanted him out.
Who is saying
because nobody, on our side, it looks to us like Trump is kind of your king. Like tried, you had every reason to go to plenty of other conservative candidates to be president. But, after what happened, the fact that you're still going with him just puzzles the hell out of me. And I feel like it's a big contrast that we were okay with dumping Biden if we thought there was a problem with him.
Real quick, I want to go back to the whole thing with the being tough on crime. So that was a parody. Like, this is a woman that has gone on radio shows talking about the fact that she used to smoke weed and laughed about the fact that she prosecuted black men at a disproportionate record. And Cash was bringing up the fact that over 1,000 of those ended up being released afterwards because of prosecutorial misconduct, because she was being really hard on black people, which is why many rappers right now and people in the black community outside of, there's a lot of black women and some black men that are like, I finally one of my own. I don't care about qualifications. They're black. She
wasn't black when she was doing it, bro. You got to give her
She was
that.
Indian.
She was not Indian. Black when she was doing it. As a black woman, she has not done anything wrong to the black community. Okay? Since she has been a black woman, she has not done anything wrong to the black community. I want to point that out. Matter of fact, she has not prosecuted anybody while being a black woman.
So since she's been a black woman, she's done bail reform during 2020 and all that things, letting out criminals just because they were part of BLM marches, even though those said criminals went back on the street and actually did harm to black communities. So, she has done some harm to black people. Barry, this is my ultimate question, because this is why we have you on. This is why I was going to have Carl and Jay, and they'll come on. They want to come on, and we just got to figure out the times. The question is the response of it's better than Trump doesn't work for anybody. That actually it shouldn't work. It should not work for anybody in America. So I want to ask you, tell me not why. Don't tell me it's better than Trump. Tell me why you think Kamala or even Joe, who's potentially wherever Joe is, why you think these people are better than Trump.
Because they didn't try to overthrow the government.
Okay. So Cash and I both attended January 6th. So how do you believe and why do you believe? And I'll let Cash he's going to have to get off of the devil's advocate for a second. But I want how do you think that Trump tried to overthrow the government? Be specific. Yeah.
So the first thing is that when he lost the election, he claimed he won. He had no evidence that he claimed that there was fraud. He had no evidence there was fraud. He was actually claiming that if he lost, it would be due to fraud before he even had the election. He, as Bill Barr said, he never showed any interest in knowing what the actual truth was, because to Trump, the truth shall set you free, because the truth is whatever makes Trump happy. So if he wins, that must be the truth. If someone says he loses, that must be a lie. So first of all, and everyone up to that point conceded. Hillary Clinton complained but I could show you the quote. She said, "Congratulations, Mr. Trump. I hope you're the president now. I hope you do well. We're all,
she
we're
did
all
say
Americans."
that.
And then a week later started
She did backpedal. It's true, but she never said he's not really the president, or it's unfair.
Well,
and
she
a lot of
knew
people
that
said,
because she was behind the Russian dossier. But anyways, Cash, go ahead, answer that.
I mean, okay, so we say that. Well, you think that Trump tried to subvert democracy, basically?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't you find that a little strange, right, to say that when the person who is going to be running for the president of the United States was not wanted by the people, and the person that was on the ballot to run for the president of the United States literally was forced out by his party, and this person is installed beyond the will of the people? The people didn't want Kamala in 2020 or 2016, 2020? 2016.
2020. She had a 1%.
They didn't want her then, but now they're forcing her upon the people who cry about democracy and the votes and how this country's supposed to run, and they literally just made and you can't say they didn't, because Joe came out and said they're saying they want me to step down. Well, I'm not gonna step down. I'm running. You want me to? He came out and said he didn't want to step down. They literally forced him out.
And forced her in.
How did they literally force him out, Cash?
Before it goes back to Barry, and I'll let Barry answer, I want to state from a democracy level, again, it's based on the vote. Kamala Harris, based on polls, before Biden stepped down, was ranked 10th amongst most likely to vote Democrats. That means from a Democratic nature, she was running in 10th place. 4 days before.
That's not what I saw, but there are a lot of polls. There's a lot of polls. It's all noise. It's all.
Did you see a single poll she was ranked in the top 2?
No. I thought I saw somewhere she was ahead of Biden and other people.
No, it was all the polls were who would replace Biden. So who would replace Biden? That would be say Biden's not there. What I saw was 10th, and that was 4 days before. So again, in a democracy, we get to go in November and vote. And if Harris is not the choice of the people, she will lose. And then I guess, according to the Trump theory, she could say, I didn't really lose. I really won. And as vice president, I'm not going to certify the election for that cheater that won.
Well, going back to that, when you were talking about January 6th, I mean, there was legitimate reason for him to contest the election. Legitimate. You had polls shut down, water leaks in certain places. They're covering up the poll watchers, kicking people out. People's votes didn't get counted. Dead people voting. You had all types of things that
I looked up the dead people voting. It wasn't true.
Maybe something was a little bit off.
The dead people voting was true. The question was the quantity of it. There was plenty
in Georgia. In Georgia, there were wild claims about dead people voting that I think Giuliani made, and including someone famous. I forget, some famous dead guy, and then turned out to just be, Giuliani and a lot of these guys. They make these statements about all the cheating that's going on. Then they get into court, and Giuliani literally says, "I'm gonna prove my case in court." And then they go to court and they say, "Well, we're not really talking about that today. We're going to talk about something different." So elections are complicated, and I can't tell you what went on in all 10 million precincts in the U.S. But to me, if I see Trump arguing with the Secretary of State of Georgia, who runs the elections, was endorsed by Trump, endorsed Trump, wanted Trump to win, and he's saying, "I'm sorry, I looked into this. It's not true." That I could understand why Trump would lie. I don't understand why the Secretary of State would be working for the Democrats.
I have a very, very easy answer for that.
Okay.
The cabal, the deep state, that shit is very real. These people are all of them on the Republican side and the Democrat side. I would say 98% of all of them are corrupt, and they're in it for themselves. They're not here for the American people. They're here for their pocketbooks. That's what I believe.
And that includes people that Trump put in their positions.
100%.
I think that's one of Trump's biggest failures, is he trusted a lot of the wrong people. And real quick, also with the thing with the Secretary of State, that phone call where, you know, find 1,000 votes. First off, I don't think people understand how other people from different parts of the country talk. And that's not a you find me or I will whatever. It is a there's votes that are still coming from different places. What counties did we miss? Like, this is a conversation piece. And my suspicion is this guy that's supposed to be a Trump guy, supposed to want Trump to win. Why did he record that phone call? It wasn't legally necessary, but he did.
Because he knew that Trump was already lying about things before it, so he wanted to protect himself.
I don't know, man.
That's a stretch.
Because Georgia wasn't the only place. He was talking about this all over, and every place he lost. I mean, there's a report by a bunch of Republicans that said, you know, that they're still Republicans. They said they're the people that often were looking for Democratic malfeasance at polls, and they went through every single case. And, you know, Trump won a couple of them, but basically they lost almost all of them.
So ultimately, when you're talking, because I want to get back to the claim of trying to overthrow the government, which is a claim of insurrection, which is just blatantly false.
Well, insurrection kind of implies, you know, guys with muskets shooting at the redcoats or something. But
no,
I would define overthrowing the government as you try to use non-legal means to prevent the
so would you believe that Hillary Clinton tried to overthrow a fair election then in 2016 with the Russian dossier?
Oh, facts. Facts.
What did she do? What did she do
that's been found to not only be false but pushed by her own campaign team? So
Knowing
I mean, that
was false.
All of it was false.
The dossier was hardly in the public eye. None of the major media talked about it. You're fucking
with me.
What?
It's not only was it blatantly in the public eye.
In December it was.
It led
in December it was.
That doesn't matter. In October it wasn't. She literally she made the media, she made the country, the Democratic Party made people in the United States of America turn against Donald Trump for 2.5 years of his presidency until he was impeached for it, even though it was completely a bogus charge. So to say that it wasn't in the media and not propagated by the Democrat Party is insanity.
You're saying she worked for 2.5 months to retroactively prevent Trump from getting elected in 2016.
She worked 3 years on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because
what happened in 2016 before the election? As far as I could tell, I think like Mother Jones or something had an article about it, and that was about it. New York Times didn't touch it. Washington Post didn't touch it.
So they were not pushing. She wanted to bury his presidency because I don't think she thought he was going to win. So she didn't think she needed it. And then once she did lose, she did everything in her power to make sure he wouldn't win in 2020. Right. And even if without COVID, there's no chance he loses. So what she did, she waited. You're right. It wasn't in the media until all of a sudden people found a reason to dislike Trump, which was a fake dossier, the Steele dossier, the Russian disinformation. She waited until it was too late for her to try to cheat and win. She used it then to make sure that she buried Trump for his whole presidency based on a lie, to which today, people still think that was a real document.
Facts.
I never hear anyone talking about that document except for Republicans.
You know why? You probably have a very small circle of people that you deal with.
I think this has become a kind of thing that Republicans like to talk about. It was not as significant. I do think that people on our side blame the Russians too much.
Actually, you know what, Barry, you're right. Do you know why? Do you know why people don't talk about it anymore on your side? Is because they found once a few intelligent Democrats found out that it was completely false and fake information, then they had to spin away from it. They don't talk about it anymore. Once it was found to be false, and clearly I would even consider that election interference for 2024 because of the fact that they've brainwashed the American people. Once it was found out to be false, it went away because they're like, all right, it did its damage. We're out.
A few intelligent expert Republicans also pointed out that Trump didn't really have a case, but I'm still waiting for the Republicans to go along with it.
You're talking about Kinzinger, who's not a Republican, and you're talking about
Bill. So far, all you said for Cash, you said the reason that all these people, and there's Kemp, there's Raffensperger, there's Bill Barr as Attorney General. The guy that Trump picked to be Attorney General because the previous guy wasn't loyal enough. He wanted to get someone more loyal than, who was it, Jeff Sessions? And Bill Barr is still kind of defending him even now. But
Bill
this
Barr
is the guy
jumped
that
back
said,
and
I
forth,
couldn't
man.
find anything.
Listen,
So
you're
saying there's some secret profit that he made off it that was so alluring that he would stab his own team in the back to help the Democrats win and cover up malfeasance.
Listen, let me tell you something. If they would have put any other Republican in to run against whoever that was a Democrat that was not Trump, you would see the political nonsense die down, because Trump was the only dude coming out exposing both sides, exposing the holes in the taxes when you file your taxes, exposing these corrupt people at the top, exposing the sex trafficking rings all throughout the country and how we got part in it, and all these people that are heavy as hell into it. So for me, when I see both sides come after a dude, like you say, his own people turning on him, they were never his people. He made the mistake of believing that they was his people. They weren't. And you had not just Republicans and Democrats, you had media, all the news, all the different news sources coming out against him. You had actors, you had musicians that loved him the whole time before he ran for president.
And love him again.
Now they're starting to love him again, but who's to say if that's even real? It could be
I would like Trump if he just had a reality show and like Trump's West Wing or something. That would be great.
So
I'm just saying, though, bro, like when you look at all of that, like even with I got to use this, the Epstein flight logs. If anybody was to go and look at those flight logs right now and see who went to the island, just see who went to the island on the Lolita Express. Go look at who went into the island, and then you tell me, because you're not going to find Trump's name on it. Trump's name is not on that Lolita Express, and he ain't been to that island. But all these other people who are against him on both sides, they're on it.
Was Raffensperger on the Lolita Express? Hard for me to picture that. He seems like a pretty boring kind of guy. I don't know. Bill Barr. Bill Barr does have a Jeff Epstein connection. His dad hired him for his first job.
Bro, this shit goes deep, man. And that's why, for me, like I say, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm just a Trump supporter. You feel me?
The problem, Cash, is the problem I see, and I get this a lot, is that you're talking about kind of complicated and obscure things, like maybe there's something going on in the background that I don't understand about how the Republicans suddenly, after seeming to be on their own side, suddenly switched teams when it came to this one thing. And you're ignoring the big obvious thing, which is that they tried in public to prove their case and they failed. There was not evidence that the case was true. There's a lot of allegations, which
there's a bunch
you
of
can say a lot of things when it goes into court. You gotta prove it.
I hear you.
But
my argument is there's a bunch of evidence that just isn't listened to. It's not accepted. Some stuff they wouldn't even listen. They wouldn't hear it. They wouldn't see it.
So
they wouldn't do nothing.
Cash, can I bring up the Georgia thing? So the Georgia case with the it's one of those ones that they've become so good. And when I say they, I mean the people that control the media. You can call it cabal. I don't want to, get out of the conspiracy theory world, verbiage, not world, but the verbiage, and just say the people that control the media and the Democrat Party and the people that are in control in some of these areas. You look at what happened in Georgia. Perfect example. Water main break. Turns out, proven, there was no water main break. So they had everybody exit the building. And then in the middle of the night, and again, these people, and I haven't talked about this in a long time, but these people, these two women who have now, by the way, sued I don't know if it's Trump campaign or whatever it was, they sued people to make money, even though these two women have never had to answer for why they went underneath the table.
I think they sued Giuliani.
They sued Giuliani, you're right.
And
they went underneath the table, grabbed stacks, which is against the rules. It's actually against the rules. But then because the guy in charge, and I don't think it was the one that was on the phone with Trump, went in front of a group of people saying it all followed the proper chain of custody. We have it on video. And whether it followed what he considers the proper chain of custody, they're able to say whatever they want. But at the same time, I think anybody with a discerning mind separate that, go, how is it that there's no poll watchers, Nothing. In a state that ended up being decided by very few votes, where
Yep.
4 gigantic suitcases during a water main break proven to be false pull out and put these completely clean sheets in one after one with nobody watching them and say something isn't fishy there. And to end my statement, we're talking about the fact that Trump wanted to not have the election certified, which he did end up allowing it to be certified, just for the reference. But he didn't want it to be certified because in that moment on January 6th, that was the day where they could investigate. He's not saying overturn the election. It was to investigate the election. And based off of just this alone, take away the actual election interference that is 100% proven, which is misinformation, such as the Hunter Biden laptop and the I mean, we just talked about the Russian dossier. Like, all these things could be deemed actual election interference, but take that away. He is somebody that wanted an actual investigation, which is, by the way, what we're calling for in Venezuela. Just so you know, our government is calling for it in Venezuela. So I find it very odd.
Okay, I'm going to ask
before
the
you
three
give
of
it,
you.
before
Can I
you
ask
give your
can I ask
before
all
you
three
give
of
it,
you
I gotta
about
go, fellas. I got my babies out here. I'm about to jump off. I apologize, but I love you guys. I'm about to go kick them with my kids. Barry, me and you need to talk more, bro. I would love to have you on another live as well. Everybody,
Okay.
please share this video out.
Have fun with your kids.
Thank you. Thank you.
Later, Cash.
Can I ask the two of you?
Absolutely.
I don't know if Casey talks, but
he does. He didn't want it to be unfair, so he didn't want to make it 3-on-1.
Yeah. So, do you really find it plausible, with everything you know about Donald Trump, that he was looking for an objective answer to who really won the election, or do you think it's more plausible that he was just trying to figure out how he could win?
I think he wanted an answer. If you go back and look in Buffalo, New York, you had somebody driving over the border into Canada to dispose over dozens of ballots. The people from your side don't see that. That was actually talked about on CNN. That was actually talked about in mainstream media. That person was prosecuted and sent to jail, but we never actually brought it up to being like, what impact did this have on the election, and was there more?
Who's
Literally
who's
whole
we?
When you say who's we, and when I say we,
you said we never brought it up. Who didn't bring it up?
So anybody on the left and the right, we don't go back to revisit the election to be like, okay, how many times does this occur? We literally have someone we prosecuted and were held accountable for driving over the border with ballots with intent to throw away or destroy.
By the way, in Texas, we had 8,000 and this woman was actually found guilty of it.
So,
and again, I mean, there's 8,000 ballots.
So do you, Casey? Do you also agree? Am I pronouncing your name right? It's Casey, right?
Casey. Yes,
yeah,
correct.
Do you also agree with this explanation that these guys that looked like Trump supporters were appointed by Trump, endorsed Trump, they really were waiting to stab him in the back so he would lose the election?
Who stabbed him in the back?
Well, like Raffensperger and Bill Barr. I mean, when the Attorney General says this, he didn't just say
I don't think
wrong.
They stabbed him in the back.
It looked suspicious, but it was wrong. He said it's bullshit. There's like nothing here. There's nothing big enough to change the election.
I don't know if that's not stabbing in the back, in my opinion. That's called turning tail, being spineless, because they can't. Trump doesn't care. All of what we're discussing right now, this is a nuanced conversation based on, I mean, you think that Trump just wanted to win. We think that Trump wanted to get to the bottom of it. Like, I think you can argue till you're blue in the face, but nobody knows somebody's true intentions. But when it comes to Bill Barr, Roethlisberger, when you're talking about these, that's not stabbing in the back. That's somebody knowing that, I mean, look at what happened to Trump and look at what happened to anybody that actually went along with the concept of, hey, let's investigate the election. They've been separated and marginalized into people that are essentially even pariahs in their own party, but it's starting to grow and people go, maybe it wasn't the most fair. So essentially it took a spine that Barr, Roethlisberger don't have. So I just think that they didn't stab him in the back, but I think they turned their back is the way that I would describe it.
I think Bill Barr turned his back and stabbed him in the back. I think Bill Barr, because Bill Barr is someone that Trump is supposed to be able to trust to take information. And as soon as Trump is no longer in office, Bill Barr goes on to CNN and it tells everybody, oh, Trump knew he lost. He was just trying to do this. That is stabbing him in the back. That is not turning your back.
Okay.
I think Bill Barr did stab him in the back.
But other than that, other than the election, I don't see any evidence that Bill Barr hated or hates Trump. He doesn't. He could have kept on being Attorney General. I assume he wanted to be Attorney General since he took the job.
Here's where it comes in, Barry. Is yes, does he hate Trump? I don't think so. But does he like to keep his job in government and keep getting into cabinets and try to keep getting into those things? So he's going to manipulate what his stance is to keep going along, to keep being appointed into a position to keep his job or a job.
He lied to get Trump out of office so he could keep his job in the government, even though his job in the government was being an appointee of Trump, which, as far as I know, would have continued into the second term.
That seems to be what you're saying. No, what I'm saying is he would tell Trump one thing, and then as soon as Trump was out of the office, he went on a media campaign spewing Trump and saying Trump knew he lost all of these things. And now, even today, Bill Barr is like, I'm still going to vote for Trump in 2024. He is the solution. Like that is someone that's two-faced. That is our current government entirely, regardless of party. And you have to look at these people as they are lying so they can keep getting their money. That is all that's happening here. Trump does this notoriously. Russo mentioned it earlier. Trump doesn't pick the best people to work for him. At times, he makes very poor choices. And Bill Barr, I consider one of them. He keeps trusting him when he shouldn't.
I do have a question because I let you off on the hook. Let you off the hook a bit on the January. I mean, talking about the trying to overthrow the government. So we've spun off all because you were talking about how he was on the phone.
Yeah, the first leg of it is that I say he's lying.
So and again, because he was asking for 11,000 votes, somebody else put that in the comments. Like again, that's a phone conversation, and I don't think people understand how. I mean, there's a lot at the end of an election where there's a lot of unvoted or uncounted votes.
I'm not focusing on that one phrase.
Okay,
that could have been a legit phrase.
Barry, that's the first thing you brought up. So tell me again.
What I'm focusing on is that people that were on his side told him, your theory about Georgia or there are other guys in other states that people out in the blogosphere and on on YouTube are saying all these cheating things happened. I'm on your side, and I looked at it, and that's not what it was. The things that you're talking to, I can explain it.
So how is
and
that?
It sounds like he already, from my understanding of the conversation, he'd already explained it to Trump, and Trump didn't take it, didn't like the answer.
So bringing up a bunch of suspicious activity that, let's say, all of it got proven to be false, but bringing it up for the sake of contesting the election, just contesting it, not overthrowing the government, but contesting it. A fair question. And again, this is somebody as Trump also knew that Hunter Biden laptop story is true. It's being suppressed. There's all these different things going on. And he essentially wants the electors to get together and stop the process on January 6th to actually have what would be a 10-day investigation. 10-day. Correct. Which again, states like Georgia, it wouldn't matter. They can't do a recount. They can't, because the way that state does its ballots is they throw the signatures away. So you'd never be able to prove fraud on a recount, just so you know. So so my question is, what did he do besides question, which again, we could talk about what Hillary did till we're blue in the face, but aside from question the election, what did he do that was trying to overthrow democracy and the government?
So, by the way, I don't think that I think the tactical move for that stage in the process was to delay it. I think the ultimate goal was to get allies to agree with his false allegations and send alternate electors that would.
What can you prove?
What's that?
I mean, you're literally just feeding off of what you think. Like I've given.
Well, you guys were just telling me the conspiracy theory that Bill Barr secretly hates Donald Trump, even though he worked for him, and
is that a conspiracy
or vote for him now?
But that's
a conspiracy, or is that what politicians do by being two-faced?
And there's also hold on, stop. There's a big difference between questioning Bill Barr's motives and saying that somebody tried to overthrow democratic process of election. It's much more serious than that. So again, as I will say, what Casey said, I disagreed with Casey to a point. I mean, we were somewhere in the middle, but that's not as important as getting to the core root of you saying that he was trying an opinion, like he was trying to get supporters to believe this lie, this big lie that the Democrats, it's a big lie. So there has to be some kind of evidence besides what I think he was doing. And this is why I'm sure that he is a bad for democracy dictator. I need more evidence.
It is absolutely clear that he was trying to convince people of the big lie. We disagree about whether it's a lie, but he's trying to convince people of it. And it's, doesn't make sense that he would do it just for academic reasons. He wants to know the answer. He thought it would lead to him.
What did the Democratic Party do during 2016, 2017, 2018 about the completely fake Russian disinformation Steele dossier? What did they do for 3 years then?
They didn't do anything.
They went to impeach Trump over like this.
No,
they did
not over that. It was over the call with Zelensky. It had nothing to do with the dossier.
It was the Zelensky call that did it?
Yeah.
How much did they? You're right. I think you are right. You are right. That would be my fault.
That was like 2019, I think.
So with that, hold on. And then 2020, it was over they then did it again over the statement.
The other thing that I find very disturbing about Trump's behavior, I think, we could argue about whether he incited people. I think it's clear he did, but I understand.
How? No,
I understand that argument could go on for an hour.
No, it won't, because it's bullshit. So I can shut it down pretty quick. So explain to me why, and I'll explain to you why not.
He first before that, he made friends he reached out to groups that have a reputation for being extreme and being violent, like the Proud Boys.
He reached out to him. Did he call him on the phone? Did he text him? What did he do?
He talked to them on TV in front of everybody. He said, "Stand back and stand by." That looks like a salute to me.
So he gave two sentences that have been what I would believe. Again, this is opinion based, taken out of context, but two sentences during a debate several months before January 6th. And that was all the cue he needed to let them know, let's take shit down on January 6th. So you're saying
that wasn't all the cue.
That's what you just said. Those two lines of communication.
He created the rally, and then at the rally, he told people that it was up to them to. Now, he did not explicitly say to attack. Okay. And I don't know if he meant them to attack. Okay. I can't prove that. I don't know. But when they did attack, when people were fighting with the guards, I mean, you were saying, I've looked at this very carefully because I think it's important.
Yeah, I was there.
From what I saw, he got Pat Cipollone, his lawyer, at 2:00, which was after they were informed that people were fighting with the guards at the Capitol. Cipollone said they needed an immediate public statement to leave the Capitol. And Cassidy Hutchinson said the rioters wanted the vice president to be fucking hung. And Mark Meadows had responded that Trump thinks Mike deserves it. So that's like not, that's not the, oh my God, I can't believe people were incited by my speech. How did that ever happen? That sounds, and then the best thing, and then Laura Ingraham says, tell the people in the Capitol to go home now. And then Fox News, right, which is what he was watching at 2:30, was reporting police hurt rioters in Capitol, tear gas in building. What's his name? McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy calls him up and he's like, they just came through my office windows. My staff's running for their lives. And you know what Trump said?
Go ahead.
Well, maybe they just care about it more than you do. So that's not the response of someone that was expecting people to just march and chant and make their, opinions known outside. That's someone that's enjoying it. That's someone that's saying, yeah, we're getting somewhere. I'm showing the power of my supporters. Even Don Jr. said he's got to condemn this shit ASAP. The Capitol Police tweet is not enough.
Well, also, let's be clear. He set this up to not happen because he did, and this is now been proven, request 10,000 National Guard that were denied by Muriel Bowser, and at the behest of Nancy Pelosi, did not take it seriously enough that Nancy Pelosi claimed fault on a private recording with her daughter that just got released a couple weeks ago. I'm assuming you've seen that, correct?
I saw the recording. I can't really figure out what she's talking about. But this whole discussion of Nancy Pelosi or Muriel Bowser, this is like, what did FDR do wrong that let us get caught by surprise at Pearl Harbor? And maybe he did something wrong. Maybe, the patrol should have gone out that day and they didn't, or something. I forget. But that doesn't let Japan off the hook for making the attack. So the only reason they needed those, I mean, if you're saying that Trump thought there'd be trouble and wanted troops to prevent the trouble, his actions during the event were not consistent with that. His actions were, this is good. They're making their feelings known.
So you saying that Donald Trump never condemned the actions of January 6th, or he never told everybody to go home?
No, for several hours, he didn't tell people to go home.
Okay. So
after 4:00, he finally did. After it was already clear that they weren't going to do anything because Congress had left. So I don't think that's like a great. And when he went home, when he told them to go home, he said, "We love you. You're very special." He didn't say the people outside that were peacefully protesting, "We love you," but the people inside, they must be Antifa because I totally didn't want an attack on the Capitol. He didn't say that.
So did he say anything about being peaceful or nonviolent, anything like that?
He said, you got to fight 18 times, and he said you have to be peaceful 1 time.
But after his speech, did he say anything?
Yes,
like
he
that?
did. He did do 2 tweets about being peaceful, and 1 tweet against Mike Pence.
Okay,
I've
so
seen
he did
some reports
communicate through
I've
his
seen some
normal
reports that the peace, according to testimony from people that were in the White House then, the stay peaceful was a big fight. That Ivanka finally convinced him to put that in. He didn't want to put it in. So kicking and screaming, he said, "Stay peaceful."
Right, but here's you're taking that from hearsay. Did Ivanka actually?
By the way, because I don't want to get it too far away, Casey. I'll let you go in a second. So none of which you said about the Kevin McCarthy conversation has ever been anywhere near proven. It was actually brought up by Representative, what's her name? Jamie Herrera Butler, who was one of the 10 people that was on the side of impeachment, who was an anti-Trumper from the beginning. And if you go to very left-leaning PolitiFact, it's still murky. There is no evidence of that conversation ever happening. So I want to be very clear that should be thrown out of any bit of the conversation as it's something that is false. Just the same as that one woman saying that Trump tried to turn the beast around, proving the fact that not only was she not there, the person she heard it from, that heard it from somebody else, said that it was a complete lie. So again, anything a part of this conversation of what you just said is far from being proven, far from being a fact. It's flat out false.
Well, it's a lot closer to being proven than that the people from his own administration disagreed with him were doing it because they wanted him to lose. But
that's a whataboutism. So you're wrong. So flat out take your medicine. You were wrong on that. You gave false.
Has Kevin McCarthy gone on record saying that anti-Trumper Butler, she's such a liar? Trump never said that to me.
PolitiFact can say that it's never been confirmed. So fact is, again, Leftist Magazine, you've got an anti-Trumper that waited, by the way, until January 12th to say that this is what she heard of the conversation. Hearsay. It's called hearsay in a court of law. I know you're a scientist, not a lawyer. I know I'm not either. But I'm going to tell you, that's called hearsay. Somebody saying it's never been proven, never been corroborated. And also something that was allowed to be brought up during the January 6th commission, yet there was never a counterpoint allowed to it. And again, not proven to be true. So regardless of the previous conversation, which you disagree with opinion, this is something not proven. You can't bring that up and not get slammed for it. That's a false statement.
Who's preventing the counterpoint?
The January 6th commission, who was as anti-Trump as anything ever known to mankind.
Who's stopping them from saying it outside of the Capitol?
Well, I mean, I don't. Should I
Why
look to
doesn't
see
the
if
Republican House?
do you want
why
me to
doesn't the
look to see
Republican?
if? Do you want me to see if McCarthy? First off, I'm on DuckDuckGo, but a lot of the search engines are going to be very difficult. But what would you suggest I search to see if that was a false comment? Did McCarthy?
McCarthy denies conversation with Trump on January 6th. And then, you'd see the details in the article.
January 6th.
I don't know if we have to do this now, but I would be very surprised if you found a disavowal from him. Because I've looked a little bit.
Casey, I interrupted you. Go ahead. I'm going to keep doing some looking. I'm going to do some fact check on the fly here.
I'm trying to understand when you're saying Donald Trump encouraged or influenced or didn't do anything to stop this. He did use his common methodology in communicating with his followers, which was on Twitter. You would agree with that, right? That is a common method for Donald Trump prior to January 6th, that he would communicate with people.
Well, he communicated, but Donald Trump is very good at getting people his supporters to do what he wants. And yet he was not able to get them to do what he wanted if that's what he wanted. If he wanted them to stop fighting with the cops, he wasn't able to do it. And people, other people like Laura Ingraham were saying he needs to tell them to go home. So certainly other people that, that are in this world were telling him, don't just say be peaceful. You have to, because you got Anthony, you were there. I don't know about Casey, but if you're in the back of the crowd and someone's in the front, you may say, I'm being peaceful, I'm okay. And the guy fighting with the cops isn't listening to the internet. So,
I was in the front. I was in the front of the crowd.
Yeah, Russo and Cash were up there. They were one of the first.
Cash was in the building.
Yeah. The part that I'm curious about, this is where I'm trying to understand where you're saying that he did nothing. This is a common stance from anybody that follows your side of the party. Yeah. And I'm trying to understand why this is even a thing, because January 6th, what time did people get into the Capitol? When did that occur?
I think by 2:30?
2:30 Eastern time?
Yeah.
Okay. So you think that 2:38, Donald Trump tweeting saying, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on our side of our country. Stay peaceful is not helping at 2:38 Eastern time?
Well, it obviously wasn't helping since it didn't stop anyone.
Right. But this is his common methodology of communication to his followers. And you're saying he did nothing. But here's the part that I also...
Many of his advisors seem to think that the right thing to do was to make a video and say, back off from the Capitol.
So the tweet wasn't enough. He had to make a video
after he did the thing at 2:38. Why didn't he send another one that said, okay, you guys have to leave the Capitol because this is totally out of hand?
Because they were, majority of the time, whether you agree with this or not, majority of the people there were remaining peaceful. There were some issues with the people at the very front of the line, and Russo was up there, but he was not part of that activity. And
which, by the way, I didn't see any of that activity. I know it happened, but it happened in very small spurts.
You saw a flashbang shot right next to you.
I saw what the police were doing to try to rile up the crowd, to try to throw it was like a bull in a china shop. You throw flashbangs and pepper balls to the back of the group to force people forward, going against every sign of reason known to mankind. But but in terms of people actually acting out on police officers, I saw none of it. None.
Yeah,
I saw,
but it did happen.
Pumping with police officers. But I saw the video. I know it happened. I know bad things happen.
It did happen. I'm not denying that, and that's what I'm making sure is clear. So Barry, the question I also have is at 1:30. So this would be 3:13 Eastern time. I'm asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful, no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. 38 minutes later, he's tweeting that again. So how can you say that his methodology of communication that he's been using, and Trump's Twitter fingers is the common term when he was elected, that it was a problem? Because I used it also. And FYI, I have never voted for Trump. This will be my first election. I will be voting for Donald Trump in 2024. I have never voted for him. January 6th, this is where I see there's a lot of narrative that is pushed and not understood from the other side when it comes to the timeline of how it happened. And I have all of the videos that were loaded on Parler. I downloaded all of them before it was taken down. I've reviewed numerous of videos. There is more people that remained at January 6th that were peaceful than non-peaceful by a significant margin.
I definitely believe that. Yeah, that's certain. I mean, I think that's certainly true.
Okay, yeah. And I appreciate you agreeing with that.
So why do you think that the people, several of his advisors and people outside the White House, that were supporters, were telling him that this was not enough and he should tell them to leave?
So this is where I think Donald Trump started realizing that people that he picked to help him in his cabinet were not really on his side. They were corrupt politicians or just part of government in general. This is where things started to come about for him, that he realized people were not backing him. If you go back and watch Michael Flynn's video, General Flynn, on how General Flynn got fired, you will actually see the other side of it a little bit, that General Flynn was fired because the people that were working with Donald Trump was saying General Flynn was a problem, but when General Flynn was actually an ally and a friend. And so Donald Trump didn't want to, but he operated under the guidance of his peers and these people that he brought in. And so he felt that he was really, what do you call it? Just like they really stabbed him in the back, for the lack of better terms. And so this is where I think we started seeing that from the election day up to January 19th, you saw the true colors of these people start to turn on him. And Trump does pick the wrong people at times. Like, that's one of the things that I don't like about him, is he struggles to find the right person to work with.
But Barry, you've had the impressive ability to shift the conversation, manipulate it, because we're still not, again, and I did the looking on the Kevin McCarthy call. It sounded like it was very heated. And Kevin McCarthy said, as a part of the call, "Who the fuck do you think you're talking to?" So there was clearly something going on in that conversation. And fact is, we never got anything from Kevin McCarthy. It probably was not a perfect conversation by Trump or Kevin either, because Kevin wanted to make sure that he was going to have a chance to win the seat that he ended up winning for a temporary period of time. But there is no evidence saying whatever he quoted, except for one woman who has been an anti-Trumper Republican forever. So again, I want to move past that point. But going into this, and again, there's some opinions coming from Casey, coming from me, coming from Barry. But to actually say, because the ultimate question is, we've managed to do exactly what the media does. And I want to circle this back, because I don't think there's been any cohesive evidence to prove that Trump was trying to overthrow the government, especially since he did actually leave the presidency, as opposed to what they say. So again, take Trump out of the mix right now. We can come back to it. I don't mind sticking around a little longer. Why Kamala?
Okay.
I mean, I think that Kamala is qualified.
Why? No, you can't. You have to fill everything. Fill why? Why is she qualified?
I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked at her record in detail, but it seems like she did it. I'm sure you could find things she did wrong. The marijuana thing I've heard about before. That's one thing.
What if it's not doing something wrong? What if it's not doing anything? She has no.
Well,
she
did get that. I did read that she. There was a lawsuit of the states against the big banks like Bank of America and a bunch of those after the housing crash, that they were cheating people out of their homes, like they weren't, giving them the fair shake they needed before repossessing their homes. I don't know all the details, but apparently Kamala pulled California, which is one of the bigger states doing this, pulled them out of the negotiations to say, because the banks were offering like $4 billion. And people at the time said, "You're nuts. You're not going to get anything. What's the matter with you?" And the banks came back with like I think it was a $25 billion offer, and $20 billion was for
they settled at
California.
20.
What's that?
They settled at 20. Correct.
Yeah. Well, I think 20 for California maybe, and other states got some. But anyway, that sounds like she was doing something. It's a responsible job. She didn't get impeached. She won for Senate. I don't think she
Yeah.
did anything especially noteworthy, positive or negative in the Senate.
And again, Trump was a reality TV star. That I mean, there's a lot of things like, did his record qualify? I mean, I think his presidency was great. I think the things that you'll bring up are some of the stuff that the division caused by the media. But fact is, he was a risk. Trump was an absolute risk to become president in 2016. And again, we had no foreign wars. The economy was continuing on an uphill slope longer than it's ever done before. A lot of good things during his he proved himself, and then of course COVID hit. But again, you're talking about somebody that has been a very non-eventful, mediocre politician that couldn't win over 1% of her party in 2020, going against Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. And
you forgot about the Cherokee.
And Elizabeth Warren and Hochul, not Hochul, whoever the other one was, whatever, Klobuchar. So she was very mediocre. She's been mediocre her whole career. I believe, and again, this is an opinion, but I think she definitely checks some boxes. Female, woman of color, but outside of the fact,
I think the main thing she has.
Go ahead.
I think the main thing is she's the vice president, and the time is so short that it's hard to have a good process, and everybody else pulled out. I mean, that's also the problem with Biden running in the first place. I think someone should have challenged him not last October.
So Barry, on that one topic, and that's what I wanted to touch on, Rizzo. So do you see, since you are registered as a Democrat, is that correct?
Yeah.
Do you feel jaded that your party did not allow a proper primary for you to elect somebody else other than Joe Biden? Even if you did support Joe Biden, do you feel jaded by your party that they didn't allow you that choice?
No, I do feel, I do think it was wrong of Biden. I think it was probably ego. I mean, I don't know, but it seems like it was ego driven that he decided he was indispensable, and it took a lot to convince him he wasn't. And I wish people had done it earlier. I mean, anyone could have challenged him. Newsom could have declared, but I don't know why he chose not to. Maybe he felt it would be, a battle he didn't want to win. I don't know. But so to me, I don't see something nefarious in this. Like if Bernie Sanders was trying to run and they did something, illegitimate to stop him from running, then I would be upset. I think my attitude, and I think the attitude of like everybody in the power structure and in the Democratic Party, I'm guessing, was, okay, we need to get Biden out. Who are we going to get? Kamala's there. And we have some other people that could run, but how are we going to pick who it is? Like she's sort of the next, she's by definition, the next in line as the vice president. So I don't see that as being some kind of, power grab or something. And, we'll get to vote in the fall.
I agree with you that from your party's situation and what has been created, I'm not putting it all on Joe Biden, because Joe Biden early on was contested even by lawsuit to be able to get other people to run against him in a primary, because the party all just backed Joe Biden, but there were 2 or 3 candidates that were trying to challenge Joe Biden, but the party just muted them and removed them from even having a chance.
I don't think that's true. I think they ran and didn't get votes.
No, let me go. I can go find it. They didn't have a chance to get votes.
And RFK wasn't even. Biden made sure that RFK wasn't allowed on certain states by ballots, which I find odd. So let's also go into the Kamala. So Kamala supposedly. First off, this is the question that's important. Do you think Joe Biden is not coherent enough? Do you think he is not able to be president anymore? Say he makes through the election. Would you say that he is not capable to be president for 4 more years?
I would say that he is capable to be president now, as far as I could tell. And, I can't say 4 years from now, but he's old. He had an episode that wasn't good. It's probable that he'll have more episodes in the future. So I think it's definitely a concern.
So let's assume that would you say you're in agreement that he is not fit to continue to be president for much longer?
it's too fuzzy to really say. All I could say is, everybody has their pluses and minuses. It's a pretty big minus if someone's getting so old that you're worried that they're not going to be capable. But I don't know. My mom stopped being able to get out of chairs like 2 months ago. And then last week, my parents called me and said, oh, mom's getting out of chairs again. So who knows? Biden could fade and be totally moribund a year from now, or he could be fine 4 years from now. I don't know.
As you get older, the physical chance for a body to rebuild is incredibly slim. As you get older, the mental ability for a human being to improve is almost impossible. So you go in and out of fogginess, but it becomes worse and worse and worse. The chance that maybe she had an injury, your mom, and she's getting a little bit better, but even that's incredibly difficult. I'm impressed that you're sticking with the fact that Biden, even though most pundits, even on the left, including what's the whitest guy in media, Van Jones, what's his name, Van Wilder, the guy on CNN,
Van Jones is on CNN, but he's not white.
No, I know, but he's the whitest guy in media. So Van Jones, crying, talking about the fact that he's no longer fit. So I firmly believe that even people on your side, for the most part, will say he's no longer fit for office. So again, I don't know how to have the conversation if you're not going to be honest enough to admit that. But if anybody works with him on a day-to-day basis, the problem is I think you're under the belief that he did last minute decide not to run, and that the fact that everybody couldn't see this coming for a year and a half away. People that are conspiracy theorists like me said there's no way he'll pull out sometime in the summer. I've said it since September, October, November of last year. I said he's not going to be the candidate. They're going to do something last minute to bring somebody in, and they did. People on the left thought I was insane. So it's hard because you don't even believe that that's possible. Because I look at somebody like Kamala and say she's been working hand in hand with a man that cognitively is clearly no longer there to anybody with a discerning mind that's willing to speak freely. And to me, the fact that she knew she was the heir apparent is not withholding information. It's nefarious and it's ugly, and it circumvents democracy and takes away your ability as a Democrat voter to have a chance to have a say on who you'd want. So Barry, because you don't need to answer that because you already think that Joe Biden is capable of being president right now. So if you had a choice from a Democratic level, of all the options on the Democrat side, from what you know, who would you want to be your candidate?
I actually don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think a governor from one of the swing states, would probably be a good choice. Kamala, I have to say, I didn't like her as much in 2020, but I've looked at her speeches, like when this whole thing was happening. It's like, okay, should we have, should we be saying get Kamala, or should we be saying get someone else? And I was kind of leaning towards get someone else. And I looked at some of her speeches and some of her interviews, and I was like, she kind of annoyed me in 2020, but these latest ones, I feel like she wasn't hitting the sour notes that I saw before.
I know it's hard. I know it's hard to bring it up off the top of your head. What interviews did she do that actually impressed you?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of the first things that came up on YouTube. I thought there were a couple where, she was making points that sounded kind of reasonable. There was one where she was talking about. Was it when she I have a feeling it's the ones where she sharply talks about how dangerous Trump is and Project 2025. No, not that. Okay. I mean, that's apple pie and motherhood for my side. I wanted to see what else she had to say, but okay. No, I remember. I thought she was talking about how women of color have more health problems in pregnancy and after pregnancy in the first year, and she said she had worked to get better medical coverage for people in their first year after they gave birth. And I thought that was exactly the right message, because she was sort of at the same time she was saying, here's something that's really helping women of color who are the ones that are having the most trouble with this. But it's not like we're saying only Black women will get this. It's anyone that, there's probably more white women in that situation, but just a smaller percentage. So I thought that was kind of a good example of pushing a policy that was, good for everyone, but also, shows that they're trying to do things that are, helping minorities.
What I find funny is, as I'm trying to fact check you just about certain things with Kamala, all of these articles about what you're talking about, not all, a lot of them are coming out in the last week. So they're trying to, obviously, she's got the media machine behind them. So you're right. She spoke out about Black maternal health issues, along with, and this is actually an older article, Michelle Obama, Kamala Harris, Serena Williams, Beyonce, using their platforms to call attention to the maternity crisis. The one thing I'm looking for is, this is the Vice President of the United States of America. You said she was pushing policy. There's no policy changes that are under her record regarding it whatsoever. So to me, that's a woman that pretends to actually be Black, talking about things for minority groups, Black women, which is true. I know the statistics they're talking about and some of these issues. What policy has she actually done to enacted to actually help this, except for talk about it to make sure she's still trying to get more of the Black vote? So I mean, that's
all the VP can do is talk, and she votes in the Senate when there's a tie, but that's all her.
So she can't bring up a legislation. She can't bring up something to
Biden executive order. I think there's either a rule change or legislation. I thought there was something enacted.
I'm not seeing it. Similar statements. I mean, go ahead.
This goes into the similar question that I wanted to ask you, Barry, is what about Kamala's policies that intrigues you that you want to vote for her? What policies does she back?
So as far as I could tell, she is, I would call her a center-left Democrat. And generally those policies, I suspect that, I could reel off a bunch of center-left policies. I think she would agree with them. I think that at this point, for me as a climate scientist, I think the fact that they did the infrastructure bill and then the IRA to improve green technology in the U.S. and make it spread more, that was a really important thing. I think she backs that. I think that.
Do you have anything other than saying I think she backs it? Anything?
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with her record.
That she backs.
I mean, I don't know what her voting record in the Senate was, and I don't know the VP. It's like it's a crazy job, right? Because your only official duty is to wait for the president to die. So,
right, but you can look at her track record as an AG and her track record as a senator, and you would know what the way she would veto a bill as a president. And when you look at that track record, you would see that she would actually be really making some poor decisions with how she would be going into office as a president. If you look at AG, she did lock up a lot of people. And part of what Joe Biden did also more recently in just election season is pardon a whole bunch of federal felons for cannabis, which happened to be a very small portion of people, because very few people are charged from a federal level with cannabis. They can't pardon somebody from a state level, which is where cannabis comes in. But she at the state locked up an enormous amount of people. From the Senate standpoint, when she was making decisions, she was making things that would actually keep pursuing the same stuff that Joe Biden did with the 1994 crime bill. And so with that type of decision making, you would still support that as a president?
I don't know enough about what she did, but I'll probably be learning it now.
Okay, and I respect that.
My feeling that someone asked about the crime, I saw just something popped up about the crime bill. My feeling is that in the 90s, the Democrats retrenched a little bit, and they sort of needed to, because murder rates had been up since the 60s. People were I grew up in New York City. People were very concerned about crime, and I think the Democrats felt like they had gone a little too much in one direction, looking at defendants' rights, and they needed to make sure that people who did bad things got locked up. So I think I've read that I've read a lot about the decrease in the murder rate, because it was cut in half under the Clinton administration, and no one's sure why that is. There's like theories around it, and nobody knows. I mean, everyone has their favorite theory, but my favorite is that lead was phased out of gasoline and people became smarter. That's interesting statistics for that, but who knows? Anyway, I think that some people credit the fact that the crime bill put more money for more cops on the beat. I don't know. Did that help? I don't know. I've seen, plus and minus. The 3 strikes you're out stuff was mostly at the state level, but I think there was some stuff in the crime bill that may have encouraged that. Was terrible. I remember hating it at the time. So, it was a big bill. I think it was a mixed bag. I think there's some good things and some bad things.
So I'm curious, like, why you feel that Kamala Harris is the best choice for president because she's the VP? Why not RFK?
He's a big climate guy. Guy.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be a whole other conversation, which maybe we don't have time to go into, but I think his anti-vaxxer stuff was kind of extreme.
Why is that?
Okay.
Why is it? I don't know a lot about it.
Okay.
The fact that he's running as a third party candidate kind of makes me feel like it was good not to vote for him in the primaries because I think it's a bad mood for him to.
Well, a lot of states he wasn't allowed to be on the primary ballot because the Biden administration.
But I wouldn't have voted for him if he was on. I don't know if he was.
They filed injunctions not allowing him to be on, which is again very weird in the democratic process. So one last thing about, and we'll end this conversation, and then if you want to really quick touch on the other stuff, if you want to hang out. So Carl was supposed to be on the show, and I wanted to talk about this. So Carl sent me a message right before he came on, and this is the problem with the misinformation. And like I said, I think you could take away any issues with ballots and talk about election interference from a perspective of misinformation, like the fact that you can't Google Trump assassination without filling out the whole word. That's what they used to do to conservative. That's what they still do to conservative accounts on Instagram. A lot of them that have had the violations, you have to type like the Ian Wenster 2 in order for it to automatically pop up. So I think that's some issues, but let's talk about one of the last conversations, because there's the conversation now going around that Trump wasn't really shot. And I think that's incredibly dangerous, especially since now the FBI corroborated and confirmed it. But there is a question. Is it me? It's from Carl. Or has Trump's ear completely healed? I mean, no sign of him being so-called shot, which, by the way, everybody said that he was hit. Everybody said that he was hit from debris from his podium, and then he tried to sway it and say that he got hit from a bullet. If any bullet had hit his ear, his shit would have been disfigured. I'm going to leave it at that. I got to get back on it. Have a good show tonight. I'll be watching. So, again, Carl, cannot wait to have you on and have the conversation. I know Cash looks forward to it, too, because you guys used to go back and forth years ago. Do you believe the assassination attempt was real, Barry?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I've seen some stuff about whether it was shrapnel or bullet. Doesn't matter. He got, the bullet whizzed by his ear or hit his ear. It seems like, as far as I know, it was a bullet. But just to say, I'm not trying to cast doubt on it. But I think even if it wasn't a bullet, just the fact that one of his supporters got shot, that's bad enough. Just the fact that a bullet was flying towards them.
That's the best answer you could have had. All right, that's good. I think it's dangerous because there was obviously the Instagram fact check saying that the photo was manipulated. The one where he was doing this, they put that on there, then they retracted it as apology. Which again, like we said, nobody really even knows that a lot of people don't know that the Russian dossier, the sealed dossier, was actually fake. We don't know who put it together, but it was fake. So people, the first thing they hear is what they believe to be truth until you rip it away from them. So I think that kind of stuff is dangerous.
I think that there's I don't think it's symmetrical between the left and the right. In my point of view, there's a lot more unfounded stuff going on the right, but there's certainly also unfounded stuff going on the left. And just like I go and bug you, Anthony, I go on Facebook and I see someone saying, someone wrote they want to track what states people go into because there's some of the abortion laws. And I was saying, that's too broad. It's like, if you want to complain about the abortion laws, but don't make it, if if you exaggerate it, you're just destroying your own credibility, and you're increasing that like paranoia that everybody has by making the other side seem worse than they are. So, I do think that both sides do it. I guess the difference is I feel like there's a bit more at the top on the right. So I think that's the only difference, but that's a big difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was Beyond the Badge had one thing earlier, and I put it up and I said I would
ignore
get to
that.
it. What?
Just ignore it.
This one, I don't think it's over with yet. I don't think she'll be the candidate. I'm not sure. I think there's still. I think she will, because this has been a test run to see if they could find a way to convince the American people that she's fit to be president. And they have done a phenomenal job spinning the living shit out of her. So I think they've made it seem like she's a formidable candidate. I still think Trump can't possibly lose. But I do think I am more. As I've always said, I never thought Biden was going to be the candidate, but I would much rather him be the candidate, because there's no way he would win. I think they could do just enough pandering to find a way to make it where intelligent folks like Barry will continue to vote for absolutely horrific candidates on the left. In that in the nicest way possible.
There's no way they can go any other direction than Kamala right now. I know people are holding on to that.
Yeah.
They already got $200 million in the coffers for Kamala. They have all of the big endorsements from the Democratic Party. You can't change that.
No, I agree.
You can't. There's no way you could pivot away from Kamala now. You just can't. And so they're stuck with it. And that's why they're all in. That's why you have the white dudes for Harris. That's why you have all of these things that are being built up out of nowhere. If you Google Kamala Harris now versus Kamala Harris 6 months ago, you were able to pull up all of her mistakes, all of her things, like her being assigned as a border czar, that the media is trying to say that she is no longer a border czar, but there's documents showing that she is. They're trying to cover it all up. And so when it comes down to this whole thing, they're stuck with Kamala Harris. The part that I'm curious about, Barry, if Kamala Harris doesn't get elected, are you going to say Donald Trump stole the election?
It depends on what happens, I guess. If there's good evidence that he did something illegitimate, then I would. But if there isn't, then I won't.
Evidence.
Let's say somebody thinks that the Republicans cheated on the day after the election. So what I want to hear from Harris and Biden is there's suspicious things here. Appoint a bipartisan commission to look at it so everyone has buy-in. Let's look at it carefully. I'm suspicious, but I don't know I don't know the result because the information is preliminary. Let's do it in a way that everybody can, agree in the end. That's what I'd like to hear.
Okay.
And
if it
goes the other way, I'd like to hear Trump say that, but I'm not holding my breath.
Do you think voter ID would be a good place to start?
Yeah, I don't know about. I've gone back and forth about it. It seems like it deters a very small fraction of like old folks that don't have the ID. But
so it's not racist.
I think if you do it in a way that you can guarantee that everybody has easy access to the ID, I'd be okay with that.
Which it is guaranteed. Every state has a way to get a free ID.
Right. There were some. I remember. After Shelby versus Holder, there was I forget if it was Texas or Georgia, there was things that were the things that they chose to be that could count as IDs, people felt were racially biased.
It was Georgia, and then they realized because there's a charge for $36, which I think is demeaning to black people to say that $36 keeps them. But what's funny is now
more blacks are poor. It's just the numbers. It's like 1%. There might be.
But let me finish. Since then, there is a way to get a eligible ID that is either a free or $1. So just so you know, anybody can vote. So anybody can afford an ID. So if you think they've made it where anybody can afford an ID, and I think it's important to maintain, because again, we'll really quick touch on Venezuela, to maintain the integrity of the election. So you don't believe that it's racist to have voter ID laws?
I think it's not necessarily racist, but I do think that a lot of states have a history of figuring
We're not
out
talking history right now. If we want to make sure that there is voter ID,
well, the fact that we have this history,
this is Jim Crow. According to the far left, this is Jim Crow 2.0 to require voter IDs.
Yeah, I would say if all I'm hearing is there's a new voter ID law in Texas or Georgia, my first thought would be might be Jim Crow 2.0, but I'd have to look at it to see. And maybe it is.
Why would that
maybe
even pop into your head? If everybody I don't know anybody that doesn't have an ID, and again, if they don't, I can probably direct them. They could go through the process to find a free one. They just have to work for it, just like you have to work to find a ballot box. And then on top of it, there is a lot of illegal immigrants that have gone through the border more than ever in the last 3.5 years. Again, border czar, Kamala Harris, but there more have come through in the last 3.5 years.
Not true.
What's that?
She wasn't the border czar.
Oh, what was she?
She was given the assignment of looking at underlying causes of immigration.
So you have an issue with the title borders others. Okay, so in charge of the reasons behind the
which is an impossible task, right? She was going to Central America and talking with them about ways to improve their economies. So
how is it impossible if we had a fraction of the amount of people going through during the Trump administration? So did Trump do the impossible? Actually, good old Barry Obama, he was pretty good at the border. He sent 11 million people back home. So there was a control under the border until all of a sudden. And the reason I brought this up under voting and having voter ID, I think it's important now because we have more illegal immigrants in this country than ever before, that if we're a little lax on voter ID laws, I feel like that could sway the election a little bit.
So it's funny you brought up Obama, because I was astounded when Trump first ran that he was making it seem like a crisis when the illegal population had gone down under Obama.
Well, they'd come in a lot, but he had sent a lot. Obama had sent a bunch home, but it is.
The absolute numbers were down.
I think during the Trump administration, it was a crisis as well. But he was doing better he was doing everything in his power, including making some decisions that people might have issues with, and he stopped them, like the separation thing, which, again, that was also done under Obama, but the media never did anything about it. But again, I don't want to.
Yeah, let's not get into this. The numbers are tricky. I've looked at the numbers a little bit, and I find like every time I look, someone has a different definition of, encounters, people that came in and were sent back later.
Well, we don't send anybody back anymore. We don't deport.
I don't think that's true.
So again, this is all about voting. So again, I brought up the subject that I knew would probably cause a little sidebar, but let's talk about voting. Would you at least say there is a lot more illegal immigrants in this country than ever before? There is a right and wrong answer on this one.
I don't know the numbers, because they're letting in people. They're also, what do you define as illegal? If someone gives themselves
anybody that did not go through the process, anybody that did not go through the process to come here legally.
But if someone walks over the border and gives themselves
that's illegal.
It's an illegal.
Okay, that's illegal.
Then I would say there's more.
Okay, fair enough. Amazing that we had to go through a couple. But okay, so if that's the case, and right now we have the highest amount of illegal immigrants in history in the United States of America, and we're trying to, for some odd reason, after whether you agree with it or not, there was questions. Clearly, one side had a lot of questions with the last election, and we want to secure it, and we want to make sure that it is as secure as possible. Don't you think that it would be important to just make sure that there is at least starting with the idea of voter ID? Because there's a lot of people that if they find a little way and they get to vote and they go in these areas, it could sway the vote pretty big. Again, in three states were decided by 17,000 votes or less, which again, based on polling of what polls after the election, that if the news would have came out about Hunter Biden, which was suppressed, it would have been enough to shift the election. But again, take that away. But let's talk about the fact that there is states that are going to be very, very close. And 20,000 votes from people that maybe shouldn't be voting could completely change the election. Do you see why voter ID is important. And it's really weird that they're making it to be a Jim Crow 2.0, a racist policy, when
I don't
most
think
black
it's
people
weird.
are literally
I
going,
don't think. No, I don't think it's weird because all the Jim Crow stuff was also race neutral. The literacy test, poll taxes, they weren't written as being, because we already had the 14th Amendment. It was already unconstitutional.
so wait, you don't think Jim
discriminate on
Crow
race.
was racist policy?
What's that?
You don't think Jim Crow original was racist
It
policy?
had a racist intent. It was phrased, at least for the voter stuff, was phrased in a way that on the face looked neutral, did not look racist. But if you looked at the effect, it was very racist. So when you say, well, it's anyone could do it, I would need to look. There's innumerable ways that you could erect barriers with that. Like, I think there's one thing where it's like where you could pick up the ID tended to be, harder to get to and for blacks. I vaguely remember that. I'm not 100% sure, but I think there's a lot of ways it can be manipulated. But
what's funny?
I actually do think that the parties should work together and come up with, a way that everyone's satisfied with.
Go ahead, Casey.
So if you think the parties should come together, do you think that we should shut down and put the Remain in Mexico policy back in place so we can actually figure out how we handle this process?
I think I don't know too much about immigration. I mean, I've looked and I've tried to figure it out, and I think all the coverage is bad. I actually think the mainstream press has done a lousy job of covering it.
Agreed.
I think they were biased on this issue. And I feel like I don't trust the right-wing press either. So, and I think it's a complicated issue. And so I don't know. I mean, I think I blame Trump because I think we kind of had a consensus before. All these Democrats voted for walls before, and it kind of became more of a partisan issue. I think people generally believe
Trump's fault and not the actual people that have chosen to make it partisan.
I think that his rhetoric in the 2016 election, when, as you mentioned, there wasn't an increase in illegal immigration. There was actually a decrease in the population. I think that kind of made
his rhetoric
politically harder for some Democrats to support.
So his rhetoric worked.
What's that?
So his rhetoric, you just said that there was less illegal immigration, and you were referring to his rhetoric. So his rhetoric,
less illegal immigration in the previous 8 years. It had gone down under Obama, and when Trump came on the scene, he was talking about it in a way that made agreeing with him toxic politically for some Democrats.
He was saying and doing the same things. It was the way that it was presented in the
So,
media.
I think that's another hour of discussion.
And I have to also
I think this is an example of a complicated question. There's unintended consequences often for any kind of enforcement action, and I'm not sure I understand the numbers, and I don't really understand the law about like who can come for asylum. So, it's like you can't know everything. I know too much already.
I'm going to agree to what you're trying to get at. I think the immigration system in this country is broken, not about the way we let people in. I think most sensible people understand there needs to be a better process, which is funny because we've gone completely the opposite way. There needs to be a better process for people that are seeking asylum that really do need help to get to the United States of America. That system is very, very broken. It goes to the highest bidder, which are the people that unfortunately need it the least. And it is a broken system across the board. That's not a Trump, a Biden. That's nobody's. That is a governmental problem. And I will agree with that. So I get it. My overriding point is, we need to be able to understand that we need to do everything in our power to make sure the election is something that most people will believe is free and fair. And the fact that they push elements of it, like the voter ID and the different conversations that we've had throughout, like, there's an openness that needs to be had. You're talking about an open conversation is what needs to be had. And you automatically are just going to blame Trump for things, which I find really odd and you say, well, the right-wing media, when you talk about the right-wing media, you're talking about 8% of media. So 92% of what people digest. It's crazy to me that 92% of the media is against Trump, yet he still is at worst splitting the vote in half right now. So I find it odd that there is a manipulation that you're not seeing as somebody that is a man of science, an intelligent human being, a well-educated human being that doesn't see that everything, your first argument to come out is always Trump bad without actually having reasons besides you didn't like his rhetoric. And last thing I'm going to say on this topic, and then we can move on once you say a piece, if you want to say a piece, is when it came to Trump and his quote unquote rhetoric. Trump's rhetoric was very anti the Democrat Party the Democrat Party politicians. As somebody that he used to be a Democrat, I used to be a Democrat. He was a previous Democrat, but he literally was like, what they're doing is wrong. Never once did he speak about Democrat voters. Never once. He spoke about the politicians. So and you're demonizing his quote unquote rhetoric. He also talked about people coming across the border. He wasn't, and this has been proven, he wasn't talking about Mexicans, Mexican Americans, people. He was talking about the criminals that are seeping through with the people coming across the border. Yet they deem it as racist because they find the clip and think that they make it seem, because 92% of the media, again, leftist, 88 to 92%, make it seem like he's talking poorly about Mexican people, when in reality he was talking about MS-13 gang members. So
I've read that damn speech so much I practically memorized it, but I think it's too long an argument to have right now.
Well, I mean, there no offense, there is no argument. Like, he was talking about gang members. He wasn't talking about Mexicans. So anyways, so on top, like all this rhetoric, he's talking about illegal immigrants that are criminals. He's talking about Democrat politicians that are crooked, and he's demonizing them. Meanwhile, from day one, the unifier in chief that Joe Biden meant to be, he has separated the country along the lines of, if you supported Donald Trump, not just talking shit about Donald Trump, but if you were a MAGA supporter, he has talked poorly, created anti-American citizen rhetoric. That is somebody that divides the country. That is rhetoric that creates division and hate. Same with what Obama did at the end of his presidency, when he essentially demonized police officers in the Michael Brown incident and several other cases where he literally was taking the side of black criminals that ended up leading to these massive riots. But Trump, the man that's deemed to be this evil, horrible, racist, terrible rhetoric, all he did was slam the political left who had policies going against him. Never once did he demonize half the population that, like you and many others, hate him. He never once talked bad about you. I find it fascinating that people don't recognize that on the left, that the rhetoric that you're speaking of is simply spinning of the intention of his words. I think it's, to me, as much as I respect the conversation, I think that philosophy that you and many other have is disgusting.
Okay. I think this is maybe for another day. I think this could be another hour of discussion. Really. But I'll just say one thing. People that study the history of fascism were very alarmed by the way Trump talked about stuff. And it's true that if you look very carefully at parsing what he said, you could deduce that he was really talking, and this was in his opening speech, you could deduce that he was talking about, he didn't say it explicitly, but he implied that it was about illegal people coming illegally, because like in the two sentences later, he mentioned the border patrol, but in the original sentence, he just said, they're not sending their best, they're sending their, rapists. The whole tactic of representing a group of people, even illegal immigrants, but the way he said it, it also kind of bled into immigrants in general and Mexicans in general. The tactic of describing a group by kind of the worst examples of them is really pushed my buttons from day one. And people that, are familiar with, I hate to bring it up, but people are familiar with the Nazis, and the way they kind of would say, look at this Jewish guy that did this crime because Jews are really criminal. And here's another Jewish guy. We could have a different Jewish guy every day that we could point to something terrible he did and prove that Jews are terrible. I feel like that's how he came out swinging. And this was his opening speech. It's not like someone just caught him in the golf course and asked him what he thinks of immigration. He was thinking how to say it. And the way he thought of how to say it was a way that, as a soundbite, was very obvious that it would land.
So as a soundbite, he came
off.
Attack. As a soundbite, he came off as what you would consider maybe, I mean, there's nothing about what you're saying that's fascist, maybe a nationalist. He came off as that. Meanwhile, from a fascist perspective, what you're describing is exactly what the Democrats have done to people like me and like Cash and like other, especially black Republicans, have been demonized to the highest level. The exact same way you're describing Nazis and also the fascist regime is the way that they have demonized people with a different opinion. So what you described was Trump's opening speech that was very, you can consider it a nationalist rhetoric. Again, I think that's out of context, but I can see where you can go that way. But there's nothing
fascist. It's not just rationalist, it's prejudice. It's using a negative stereotype to characterize people.
Well, he stereotyped criminals as criminals. That's
no.
Okay. You're right. It's a whole different conversation for a different day.
There's no higher criminality among immigrants than there is among anyone else.
There's no higher.
Let's say within a factor of 2. I don't know, within a factor of 2.
Sorry, what did you just say? Repeat that.
Right, because he wasn't talking about the crime of coming across the border. He was talking about, crimes that people are physically afraid of being attacked or, robbed or raped or something. So,
yeah, like we've seen a lot of Americans die over the last 6 months because of illegal immigrants that have came into our country.
The rate, as far as I know, is about the same. Again, within a factor of 2, which, depending on how you count it.
It's such a funny statistic when the left and the leftist media brings up the rate of crime per and I'm going to use the word undocumented immigrant. So how do we know how many of these? That's a pretty specific number. It's actually quantifiably impossible to judge it, but we do know that these heinous crimes are. Fact is, they're happening, and whether it's a rate of crime that's probably as much an estimate as humanly possible. We know where they all are. That's pretty shocking that we don't send them home. So I think that that's a very odd equivalent.
What are you saying is odd? It's odd that I'm saying that the crime rate is important.
Any statistic that does a crime rate with something that is deemed undocumented is hilarious to me because you're making up it. And I've seen it many times. The first time I saw it, I was working out at Planet Fitness. I saw it on the screen and it was crime rate of undocumented immigrants. And it gave the percentage and related to the rest of the community. And it was a hair less than everybody else. And I go, well, that's funny. How do they know if they're undocumented? How do we know exactly how many illegal immigrants there are? Also, a lot of the crime that happens.
There's estimates of them.
Hold on. And a lot of the undocumented immigrant, a lot of the crime that happens within the undocumented community is also happening from other undocumented immigrants, which actually doesn't even get reported. And then on top of it, the actual crime that they all committed, all of them are guilty of one crime, which is illegally entering the United States of America based on our laws. But again, I mean, all of that, it's hilarious to me that that's a number that's spun. And you did it, and I
don't think it's spun. Look, I hear Texans are really dangerous. I could probably every single day next week, I could find a really heinous Texan that murdered someone in a brutal way. Should we all be scared of Texans? Obviously not.
I think that's
so when you just point, when you have millions of people, and you could point to 365 horrible people among those millions of people, and every day you could talk about a new one. What's that telling you? It's just telling you that some people are bad in any group.
I don't disagree with you that there are some bad apples, but the part that I cannot say I have ever seen in history is the amount of people, women, children or teens being raped and murdered in a 6-month period of time, and they are all tied to illegal immigrants into this country. We are seeing it all over.
The murder rate's down. It went up in 2020 and it's down now.
I want to see those statistics because
the statistics are from the FBI saying that there is a 12% decrease in murders, not in violent crime, but in murders.
Yeah, murders. I don't believe any of the other statistics. I think the murder one is the most accurate.
I mean, I think violent crime, for some odd reason, they don't quite have the same report. And they also no longer differentiate between race, which I find funny, that they stopped doing that in 2017. regardless, you're right. According to the statistics that we are being presented with by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Department of Homeland Security, that also says white supremacy is the number one risk to our country. That is the data that they're providing, but I don't know of a single human that feels safer in their big city. I'm just throwing that out there.
No, you have illegal immigrants attacking cops in New York City.
And
my son, I think my son feels pretty safe. Both my sons, actually. Chicago.
Do you not feel you have to speak for your son, but you can't
Chicago
say on your behalf you feel safe?
I live in the suburbs, so I don't think it's a fair comparison.
Where do your sons live in Manhattan?
No, one lives in Chicago,
Chicago,
Hyde Park, and one lives in the Mission District in San Francisco.
You don't think that they're more at risk than they were 5 years ago for crime?
No.
We have two police officers
I think in
from
San
the
Francisco,
Chicago
if they had
that would disagree with you.
In San Francisco, I think if they owned a store, they would be more at risk, because I think there's been an increase in these.
You have numerous videos coming out of San Francisco of people walking out of their apartments trying to go to work, and they were crying and recording them on a video on TikTok that they were attacked and threatened walking to work.
Yeah,
these are people that live in that area and voted for what's happening.
I mean, there's always crimes. There's crimes 3 years ago, 8 years ago, 30 years ago. So there's always people crying about terrible things.
You never had mass corporations leaving a city like you do San Francisco due to crime, because they changed the grand theft laws.
That's the other part about violent crime changing and all that, is they're allowing offenders to get off. San Francisco, perfect example. If you steal less than $2,000, it's no longer even a crime. So of course, crime statistics are going to go down when actual crime is illegal. I mean,
like I said, I don't trust the theft statistics as much. So I tend to just focus on murder. San Francisco, I think, has a pretty low murder rate. It's like in the middle for U.S. cities. Boston is super low. I used to live in Boston. It's really low now. And New York's pretty low. DC is terrible. Baltimore's terrible. I mean, I think that's horrible what's happening there. And I think that's on us. People in Maryland and DC should figure out how to fix it. But I don't think that it's true. I think that there's been a propaganda effort to make you think about crime. There's always crime. You could always find a favorite, group of people to point to when you're talking about crime and talk about how it's getting worse. I think someone was just reporting that they've polled people on whether crime's been getting worse, and people have said crime has been getting worse every year for the majority of people, like every year for the last decades, even as the crime has come down, even as, at least again, murder has come down, probably other crimes too. I mean, parts of DC where my wife used to live, they're much safer than they were in the 90s.
I don't want to scare you here, but Hyde Park, Chicago, Illinois ranks in the bottom 2 percentile for crime. A crime occurs every 2 hours and 12 minutes on average in Hyde Park. Your home is 300% more likely to be robbed with no one home in the security system. They get rated a violent crime rate of an F, property crime rate F, other crime rate F. I mean, I don't want to, I'm just saying it's not safe. Like, it's just not, it's silly to think that. But okay, let's wrap it with maybe something we agree on. The election in Venezuela, we wanted to touch on it. We'll be done with this show in less than 10 minutes. I promise. No matter what, we'll just cut it. There is the election in Venezuela. I'm drawing it now. We've had a long talk. What's the guy's name? Maduro. Maduro was the winner. Yeah. It's ironic. He gets to count his own votes, essentially. The exit polls showed that he got approximately less than 20% of the vote, is everything that I've seen. And the opposition party got 60%. And that is what the opposition party's vote count they're showing. Meanwhile, Maduro's is showing that he won by about a margin of 15%. Clearly some issues there. Our own FBI director, I think it was Ray, coming out saying that we need to call for a free and fair election in Venezuela. I think it's scary to see what's happening in different parts of the world. Venezuela has been a scary place for a long time. And I know a lot of American Republicans that are from Venezuela saying, we're seeing early stages of what happened in Venezuela. But regardless, I know Barry's going to disagree with that. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, from a bipartisan perspective, what do you think, Barry? Do you think what's happening in Venezuela is a risk?
A risk for what?
For the instability of the region, of this area, of this whole continent.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely driving some immigration to the U.S., including illegal immigration. It's funny because Colombia used to be a mess, and now Colombia kind of got its act together, and now Venezuela's a mess. I mean, I don't know that, and Colombia being a mess, maybe that contributed to the the drug problems here, but I don't know if that was really the thing driving it. So I don't know. I think we're mostly, I don't think it wouldn't be in my top 5 problems for the United States. Obviously, it's terrible for the Venezuelans that their economy has collapsed and they have a dictatorial government. But
I think it's just eye-opening that elections are sketchy across the globe right now. That's all.
Oh, elections have always been used by, authoritarians and full-on dictators to legitimize their rule, even when they're, closing down the opposition press and, jailing people or disappearing them. That's always been the case. So we had a moment in the 90s when it seemed like things were getting much better everywhere, but hasn't been great since then.
Yeah, it was going well until the U.S. signed a treaty to back Ukraine. U.S. also went into Venezuela, took a lot of their minerals and their resources, and then inserted their puppets that they wanted to be able to control these nations. So there is corruption across the board. And this is not blaming a certain party. This is corruption from the higher levels of bigger government to be able to favor their friends and move resources around to get money into their pockets. That is where this corruption is coming from.
You're saying in Venezuela? Because I mean,
Venezuela was the richest.
A lot about U.S. interfering in Latin America, but not so much Venezuela.
Very much so.
Venezuela is the second richest nation back in the 90s due to resources. They would have been able to dominate many other countries. In the world because of their oil. Like they were able to dominate the world because of their oil. And because
they were not,
if you look, what?
Go ahead. Doesn't matter. Go ahead.
They were on a very fast upward trend, but ever since we inserted ourselves down there, and then we all of a sudden inserted a puppet for a president down there,
who's
their
the puppet?
Country went to. Let me go back and look it up.
It
wasn't Maduro. It was prior to Maduro.
I used to protest against the U.S. doing stuff like that back in college, but I haven't heard that for Venezuela. That's all.
Yeah. Then look at also the treaty that we signed to be able to back Ukraine, and look at what we're doing with Ukraine now. We're funneling billions of dollars through that nation for a war that is not really a war if you look at it. Like it's a real wars. We're going to go in and demolish each other's country, and that is not really happening. Like occasionally you have a bomb dropped, but it was prior to Maduro. I'm trying to look up
Chavez.
I think it was Chavez.
But I mean, he wasn't put in by the U.S. for sure.
Why do you say that?
Why would the U.S. put him in? He was not that friendly to the U.S.
Does he have to be friendly with the U.S.?
I mean, generally the U.S. puts in, when they put in governments, they're putting in governments that are friendly to the U.S. I don't know of any.
We didn't do it in Brazil either.
What's that?
In Brazil in 2016, 2014, we didn't put in anybody that was friendly to the U.S., but it really flipped that country upside down for a little while.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't heard that we put in anyone in Brazil either. I don't know. I think
so. If you go look at that there was a similar movement to Black Lives Matter of 2020 that was ran in Brazil that actually flipped their election. But because they ran a smear campaign. They ran a smear campaign of propaganda to really say that there was racism and stuff like that was pushed inside the country to get them to manipulate and vote another way. Where the U.S. came in is really teaching propaganda. You have to agree with me that the U.S. pushes propaganda better than any other country in the world.
We're really good at selling, McDonald's and Coke. I don't know about Coca-Cola, maybe Coke too, but
that too. Hunter Biden does a very good job with that.
The best of propaganda, but I guess we're
and this is where you got to start looking at some of those details. Like when you look at some of these other countries and how they were established, and some people that got their positions, and then all of a sudden what happened in those countries. This is where there is a concern with what is going on right now in our nation, where I keep bringing up every day on social media, is Joe Biden alive? Because we need to understand this from a leadership standpoint on, is someone there actually making decisions on our behalf, or is there a shadow government deciding for us?
So real quick, guys, let's move. I want to dispel a myth real quick. This whole article that's all over the place on conservative media. Netflix, the Netflix stock took a tumble. They effed around. Now they find out this is actually, it was originally from a satire magazine, and it's been spread all over the place. Netflix, I don't even know if Netflix is it even confirmed whether or not they donated to the Kamala Harris campaign.
The CEO did.
CEO
or co-founder, CEO, whatever it is. He's still on the board at Netflix. He did donate, but not Netflix themselves, but he's on the board.
Let's not celebrate anything. First off, Netflix did not, their stock did not tumble. They did not lose a massive amount of subscribers.
Nope.
Look, if you want, this is one of those ones that if you want to get nitpicky about what you do and what you like, I draw my line in the sand. I don't buy Nikes for a lot of different reasons. Like there's a couple brands I won't buy. Like if Netflix is your hill to die on, I got news for you. You probably should never buy a TV again. Open a TV box, open a TV network, Hulu, like name it. You shouldn't do it. They're all the exact same place. So
you forgot an important device. What about this one?
Apple. You probably should throw away your Apple phone. So again, this is one of those weird hills to die on, even for the $7 million given to the Kamala Harris campaign. Again, I like seeing these kind of seemingly big money leftist donors. I think that's just curious to think about, but I'm not going to lie. You want the truth? Not canceling my Netflix. New Cobra Kai season just came out. So,
oh geez, priorities.
It's so good. All right. So with that last thing, and I'm curious, Barry, on this one, and we'll do, what did I say, from 10 minutes? I got 2 or 3 minutes. Opening ceremonies. I think it was in really bad taste. I think the argument that people have about it being about the Last Supper. Look, I think it's funny because people are like, it was Greek. It can't be the Last Supper. Art, you can combine a bunch of things. It really was. It looked like the Last Supper. My issue is not with the actual blasphemy, which I do think was a little blasphemous. It's the fact that it was so overtly sexualized, and I mean, it's a children's program. There's a guy's balls hanging out. I think that there's some massive problems outside of just the religious aspect. I think it's a degradation of society. That's my personal opinion. And lastly, and then Barry, I'll let you go as the guest. I think that this is. Do you remember the purpose of the Roman games back in the day? It was to create a diversion from how much the government was fucking over, pardon my French, their people. So I think it's ironic that all of us are, and again, I'm guilty. I watch a couple different things on the Olympics. I like watching the track and ping pong once, I'll throw it on. Snoop Dogg's been
would like ping pong.
Snoop Dogg's been absolutely hilarious, by the way. But it's a distraction to what they are doing separately. So make sure you're paying attention. I think a lot of us are. But Barry, what do you think of the opening ceremonies of the Olympics and the Olympics in general?
I'm in favor of the Olympics, and I didn't see the opening ceremony, so I don't really have an opinion about it.
You're golden. You didn't even have to see a guy's testicles. Actually, Casey shared the screenshot of it, and he got a 30-day ban on Facebook for sharing what was on primetime TV because there was a drag queen man thing's balls hanging out, just completely out, and it was on a thing that looked like the Last Supper. Casey, what do you think about it? And then we'll call it a quit.
I'm on hashtag boycott Olympics for multiple reasons, because in the same week that the Olympics was started with the opening ceremony, which was absolutely disgusting, and then my state, Utah, got the nomination for the 2034 Winter Olympics, which I absolutely am against. Until we can start figuring out our money in our country, we should not be spending billions of dollars on these games.
They always propose something big for the Olympics, and I mean, they've done documentaries of it. So they promise something big, and if a city doesn't have the infrastructure to do all of it already in place, it turns into ghost land afterwards, and it's just wasted property. So Salt Lake City's got the surrounding area might have, but is it winter, summer or winter? Summer games?
Winter.
Winter?
We already had the Olympics in 2002, and we have all of the facilities. We kept them up. They're still used even today.
So
And that's why we got it. But here's the problem. You have the government saying it's not going to cost us anything, but give it 2 years, they're going to be like, oh, we need to spend $2 billion here. Just like what LA is doing right now to be able to be ready for the 2028 Summer Olympics. So it's no different, guys. Like, they just lie to us and then turn around and funnel billions to whoever they want to benefit. That's what's happening.
Fair enough. All right. Barry, I appreciate the time. You got any final words for the people out there? Tell them where to follow, where to go to Slow News and all that stuff.
Yeah, my blog is slow-news.org. I think some of it is sort of neutral reporting about statistics. Some of it is very non-neutral flaming about politics. Some of it is random stories, like something I did with my son or something. And I'm always open to having a rebuttal if anyone wants to post anything on there. So I thought this was a really good conversation. I think you both had a lot of good points to make. I think I see where we're diverging on some things, but I think you argued your positions well too. So I appreciate that. I often go on the internet and the answer to what I say is, you're a libtard or what about this other thing that's unrelated that's bad on your side?
And no offense, Barry. A lot of times,
away from that. And
you poke and prod, and I do like to respond, and I'm guilty of responding a lot to you. And I'm not trying to be haughty when I'm like, I've answered this question a million times. There is some people that oppose me, and if I were to answer, and that's why I do the show like this. Unfortunately, right now, thank you for Elon, and because we have 1,450 people watching right now, so it allows me to speak and answer questions a lot of times in live time. You caught me earlier. I mentally was wrong about the first impeachment, so thank you for doing that. I forgot that it was actually not about the Steele dossier. That was more of a smear campaign. So thanks for correcting me on that. I appreciate it. But across the board, I don't answer you all the time, or I tell, like, I only have so much time in the day on top of my regular world.
Sure.
And that's why I focus so much of it on these videos. And it is rare, Barry, for anybody to have the stones to come on and have a conversation. So
yeah, I agree.
Okay. Well, I don't know any better, I guess.
I love it. Casey, final words, take us home.
Don't trust the government. I'm going to be short. Don't trust the government.
Barry, thank you. Take it easy, guys. Follow all the stuff. If you look on the bottom, make sure you've seen all the different stuff we run through. CenturyH2O.com is one of them. And that's our water filtration systems that support us. Where's the banners? Wake Not Woke, so I'm wearing the Pure Blood shirt. And Barry, don't be offended. It's Pure Blood. I am half Jewish. It's not like I'm doing a little Nazi thing. It's more about the unvaccinated thing. Let's be very clear. I don't want to, get anybody upset.
Okay.
So we got the Pure Blood line, Awake Not Woke hat, all the gear, all the stuff. And
I
lastly,
thought it was anti-muggle, but okay.
And lastly, freedombox.info. Go ahead. Where is it? .info? Did I say that wrong? Am I thinking? freedombox.info.com. If you want to learn about shopping All American and all those products. I did my unboxing yesterday. It was a fun little video. Check it out on my personal page. Tomorrow night, if anybody wants to join me for my free speaking class that I do every week and have an absolute effing blast with, doubledownspeaking.com, 6 p.m. Central. Just fill it out. Free registration, free. Join me. We've had a lot of people that follow. They have got to be a part of it. It is a lot of fun. Keep your cameras on. You get better at speaking. You get better at confidence. That's how we do it. Take it easy, guys. God bless. Have a fantastic evening. Deuces.